Welcome and thank you for being here. Before you settle in, take a slow breath and allow the day to fade. There is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to follow closely. This story is meant to unfold gently, like a quiet night sky opening above you. You can listen actively, or you can let the words drift into the background as rest arrives naturally. Tonight's story moves far back in time to the ancient world of Greek mythology, to an age before the Olympian gods, before Zeus, before thunder and crowns and conflict. This is a calm journey into the earliest beginnings, where the universe itself was still discovering what it could become. There is no lesson here, no urgency, and no demand for belief, only a slow, steady telling shaped for rest and reflection. Let the voice guide you, and if sleep comes, welcome it. Now let us begin. Before there were gods with familiar names, before mountains rose or seas found their boundaries, there was only the beginning that could not yet be shaped. The ancient Greeks called this first state chaos. It did not mean disorder in the modern sense, but an open vastness, a wide and silent gap where nothing had yet taken form. It was not dark or light, not empty or full, but simply unbounded existence, waiting without intention. In this vast openness, there was no direction and no passage of time. Nothing moved forward and nothing rested. Chaos was a condition rather than a moment, a deep stillness that held all possibility without revealing any form. It was the quiet before differentiation, where everything existed together, unseparated and undefined. From this openness, the first presence emerged without force or command. Gaia came into being, the earth itself, solid and enduring. She was not shaped by another hand, nor formed through struggle. She arose naturally, as if the openness of chaos had found weight and substance within itself. Gaia became the ground beneath all things, the stable foundation upon which the future would slowly unfold. With Gaia came a sense of place. For the first time, there was something that could support, nourish, and endure. She was imagined as broad and patient, neither ruler nor servant, but the quiet source of life. Mountains would one day rise from her body, rivers would trace paths across her surface, and forests would take root in her soil. But in the beginning, she simply existed, complete and self-sustaining. Alongside Gaia emerged Tartarus, the deep and shadowed depth beneath the earth. Tartarus was not yet a place of punishment. It was an immeasurable below, a vast downward space that mirrored the openness of chaos in another direction. Where Gaia provided form and stability, Tartarus provided depth and distance, creating balance through contrast. Between Gaia above and Tartarus below, the world began to take shape. Not through design or intention, but through the natural emergence of structure. Above and below became ideas before they became places, setting the stage for everything that would follow. Then came Eros, not as a god of romance, but as a force of connection. Eros was the impulse that drew things together, the quiet attraction that allowed creation to move beyond isolation. Without Eros, the Greeks believed, nothing could grow or multiply. Eros did not rule or command. It acted silently, encouraging union and relationship wherever it touched. Through Eros, Gaia was no longer alone. Possibility expanded. The universe gained movement, not through violence, but through gentle desire. Eros became the unseen thread that allowed existence to become shared rather than solitary. From chaos also came Nyx the night and Erebus, the deep darkness within it. Nyx was not feared. She was the veil that softened the world, bringing rest, mystery, and quiet. Erebus represented depth and shadow, not evil, but the unknown spaces where light had not yet reached. Together, Nyx and Erebus gave rise to Ether, the bright upper air, and Hemera, the day. Night and day did not battle each other. They followed one another in a calm rhythm, establishing the earliest sense of time. Day gave way to night, and night returned to day, like a steady breath. This rhythm was slow and unforced. Light did not conquer darkness, and darkness did not erase light. They existed in balance, creating cycles that would later shape mortal life. At this early stage, there was still no hierarchy and no struggle. Each presence existed according to its nature, not seeking control, but fulfilling its role within the unfolding whole. The ancient Greeks imagined this early cosmos as harmonious, not because order was imposed, but because balance emerged naturally. Gaia, now aware of herself, began to bring forth life from her own being. Without partner or effort, she produced the mountains, tall and unmoving, forming the bones of the earth. She also gave rise to Pontus, the sea, a vast and restless presence that surrounded her and mirrored the depth of Tartarus in fluid form. The sea moved endlessly, shaped by no clear boundaries at first, reflecting the openness of chaos while remaining connected to Gaia's surface. Land and water now existed together, each defining the other through contrast. Only later did Gaia give rise to Uranus, the sky. Uranus spread himself above her, vast and luminous, filled with stars that marked distance and height. With Uranus above and Tartarus below, the world gained its full dimension. Uranus remained close, pressing against Gaia, enclosing her. This closeness was intimate and complete, though no conflict had yet emerged. From their union would come new generations, but for now the cosmos rested in this early balance. The ancient Greeks did not imagine this beginning as loud or violent. There were no battles, no sudden acts of creation, no declarations of power. Everything unfolded slowly, as if the universe itself were discovering what it could become. These earliest beings were not gods in the later sense. They did not rule mortals or demand worship. They were forces and conditions, shaping reality simply by existing. Their stories were meant to express how the world feels and functions, not to record events as history. As you listen, there is no need to hold each name or detail. Let them pass gently, like shapes forming and dissolving in the dark. This is the world before heroes, before thunder, before crowns and wars. The universe is still quiet here. Power has not yet learned to speak. Conflict has not yet learned to rise. The ground has been laid, the sky has stretched above, and the deep waits below. This is the calm before the ages, where everything that will one day happen rests silently within possibility. And from this still beginning, the story will continue, slowly moving toward lineage, time, and the first reshaping of power. As the quiet balance of the early cosmos continued, Gaia was no longer alone in her awareness. The ground beneath all things had found its place between the vast openness above and the deep silence below. Within this stillness, existence began to lean gently toward continuity, toward lineage, toward the slow unfolding of form through relationship. Gaia did not remain solitary. From her own being she brought forth Uranus, the sky, stretching wide above her. Uranus was expansive and luminous, filled with countless points of light that would later become stars. He did not hover at a distance. He pressed close, surrounding Gaia completely, enclosing her within his presence. Together, earth and sky formed the first great union, a complete sphere of existence. This closeness was intimate and constant. Sky and earth were never apart. The ancient Greeks imagined Uranus covering Gaia fully, leaving no open space between them. From this union came the next generation of beings, powerful and vast, born not into conflict, but into fullness. The first children of Gaia and Uranus were the Titans, immense presences who embodied fundamental aspects of existence. There were 12 in number, 6 male and 6 female, each representing forces that would later shape the world. Oceanus carried the endless flow of waters. Coeus embodied intelligence and inquiry. Creus held the unseen pillars of order. Hyperion bore the light of the heavens. Iapetus carried mortality and limitation. Cronus, the youngest, held time itself, sharp and decisive. Alongside them were the Titanesses. Theia carried sight and brilliance. Rhea embodied flow and continuity. Themis represented balance and natural law. Mnemosyne held memory and remembrance. Phoebe carried clarity and prophecy. Tethys nurtured the waters that would encircle the world. These beings were not yet rulers in the sense later gods would become. They were expressions of structure, each carrying a piece of the growing cosmos within themselves. They existed together, shaping reality simply by being present. But the union of Gaia and Uranus brought forth more than the Titans. Other children followed, beings of immense strength and unsettling form. The Cyclopes were born, each with a single eye representing focused force and raw power. They were followed by the Hecatonchires, giants with 100 hands and 50 heads, embodiments of overwhelming energy and motion. Uranus, gazing upon these children, felt fear, whether from their appearance or their potential. The ancient stories do not say clearly. What mattered was his response. Rather than allowing them space within the world, Uranus pressed them back into Gaia's depths, hiding them away, denying them light and presence. This act brought the first true tension into existence. Gaia felt the weight of her children trapped within her. The pain was not only physical but existential. Creation had been stifled. Possibility had been denied. For the first time, the cosmos knew discomfort. Balance began to strain under suppression. Gaia, patient and enduring, could no longer remain passive. The stillness of the early ages gave way to the quiet stirring of resistance. Gaia fashioned a tool from her own substance, a sickle of hard stone, sharp and purposeful. She did not wield it herself. Instead, she called upon her children, asking if any would act to end the suffocating closeness imposed by Uranus. The Titans hesitated. They had never known separation. To act against their father meant change, and change had not yet been tested. All but one remained silent. Cronus, the youngest, stepped forward. He was already aligned with time and inevitability. Where others hesitated, he accepted the necessity of action. Gaia entrusted him with the sickle, and together they waited. When Uranus descended to envelop Gaia once more, Cronus struck. The act was swift and decisive, not prolonged. Uranus was separated from Gaia, and for the first time, sky and earth were pulled apart. Space entered the world. From this separation, new forms arose. The blood of Uranus fell upon Gaia, giving rise to the Erinyes, spirits of consequence, and the giants, embodiments of raw force. From the sea, foam formed by what fell into the waters, Aphrodite would later emerge, carrying beauty and attraction into the world. But more important than what arose was what changed. The world now had distance. Sky no longer pressed upon earth. Air and openness existed between them. The cosmos could breathe. Uranus, wounded and withdrawn, no longer ruled. His reign ended not in destruction, but in displacement. Power shifted, and Cronus took his place as ruler among the Titans. This was not celebrated as victory, it was presented as transition. Each age in Greek mythology replaces the one before it, not through harmony alone, but through necessary disruption. Creation moves forward by breaking old forms to allow new ones to emerge. Cronus, now king, did not free all of Gaia's imprisoned children. The Cyclopes and Hecatonchires remained hidden, their potential unrealized. Order had been restored, but incompletely. Suppression lingered beneath the surface. Time began to move differently under Cronus's rule. The cosmos entered an age defined by cycles, seasons, and inevitability. What had happened once would, in some form, happen again. Power would rise, and power would be challenged. As you listen, let the story remain calm, even as tension quietly grows. These are not tales meant to disturb, but to reflect the rhythms of change and continuity that shape all existence. The world now had structure, space, and succession. Earth lay below, sky arched above. The Titans stood between, shaping reality through their presence. Yet beneath this order, unresolved forces waited. Time itself, embodied by Cronus, would soon discover that inevitability does not favor permanence. The age before Zeus had begun in earnest, shaped by creation, suppression, and the first turning of power. And so the story continues, moving steadily toward the next transformation, where even time will face its limits. With the sky lifted away and space opened between earth and heavens, the cosmos entered a new age. Cronus now stood as ruler among the Titans, holding authority not through harmony, but through decisive change. Time itself had taken the throne, and with it came a sense of order shaped by cycles and inevitability. Cronus ruled alongside Rhea, his sister and consort, who embodied flow, continuity, and the quiet persistence of life. Together, they presided over an era that felt stable on the surface. The world followed rhythms now. Seasons formed, growth and decline found balance. Yet beneath this calm, unease lingered. Cronus remembered what had come before. He knew how Uranus had fallen, and the knowledge shaped his rule. A prophecy soon emerged, whispered through the fabric of existence itself. It foretold that Cronus, like his father, would one day be overthrown by one of his own children. This knowledge did not arrive dramatically. It settled slowly, like a shadow stretching across time. Cronus, embodiment of inevitability, sought to resist the very cycle he represented. Fear took root, not loud or violent, but persistent. As Rhea bore children, Cronus acted. Each newborn was taken and swallowed whole, hidden away within him. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon were all consumed in this way. Life entered the world only to be returned immediately to containment. These acts were not described as cruelty alone, but as fear-driven preservation. Cronus believed that by containing his children, he could stop the future from arriving. Time attempted to hold itself still. Rhea endured this loss in silence at first, but grief gathered within her. Each child taken deepened her sorrow and sharpened her awareness. Continuity had been broken. The natural flow she embodied had been obstructed. Gaia, watching once more, recognized a familiar pattern. Suppression had returned, echoing the act that once ended Uranus's reign. The cycle was repeating itself, as cycles often do when left unresolved. When Rhea became pregnant again, she sought counsel. Together with Gaia, a plan was formed, not to destroy Cronus, but to allow the future to exist. When the child was born, Rhea wrapped a stone in cloth and gave it to Cronus instead. He swallowed it without question, believing the prophecy undone. The child, Zeus, was hidden away, far from his father's reach. He was raised in secrecy, nurtured by the earth, and protected by silence. His growth was not rushed. Time allowed him to mature slowly, outside the awareness of the ruler of time itself. Meanwhile, Cronus continued to rule, unaware that inevitability had already begun to move beyond him. The swallowed stone remained within, a silent reminder that deception cannot erase destiny. As Zeus grew, the world subtly shifted. Nothing dramatic announced his presence. Change arrived quietly, as it often does. Strength developed alongside patience. Awareness formed alongside restraint. When the time came, Zeus returned. Through guidance and cunning rather than brute force, he confronted Cronus. The swallowed children were released, whole and alive, emerging back into the world they had been denied. This release was not chaotic. It felt restorative, as though something long delayed had finally resumed its course. Hestia returned to hearth and stability, Demeter to growth and harvest, Hera to partnership and bond, Hades to depth and boundary, Poseidon to the restless sea. Cronus's reign ended not with destruction, but with displacement. Time moved forward once more. The cycle completed itself, preparing the world for a new order. Yet even then, balance was not immediate. The Titans did not surrender easily, and the cosmos stood on the edge of conflict. What followed would shape the structure of the divine world itself. As you listen, allow the tension to remain gentle. These stories speak of cycles, not of cruelty alone. They reflect how resistance to change often leads to greater upheaval, while acceptance allows renewal. The age before Zeus was drawing to a close. The forces of time, continuity, and inevitability had played out their roles. The future, long delayed, was ready to step forward. The story continues toward the shaping of order, where power would be tested not only by lineage, but by responsibility. And so, the night carries us onward, toward the moment when the world would be divided, defined, and set into lasting balance. With the return of the swallowed children and the quiet fall of Cronus, the cosmos entered a moment of suspension. Power had shifted, yet order was not fully established. The world stood between eras, balanced delicately between what had been and what was yet to come. Zeus did not immediately claim absolute rule. The ancient stories emphasize patience at this stage, a pause before structure. The young god understood that authority required more than lineage. It required balance, restraint, and the willingness to face forces older and deeper than himself. The Titans, though displaced, still held immense presence. They were not merely defeated figures, but embodiments of fundamental forces. Their resistance arose not from malice, but from the inevitability of change pressing against what already existed. The conflict that followed, known as the Titanomachy, was not described as a single moment of violence, but as a long and measured struggle. It spanned ages, echoing through the foundations of the world. Mountains shook, seas shifted. Yet even in this upheaval, the stories maintain a sense of order beneath the surface. Zeus did not stand alone. He sought allies among those who had once been suppressed. The Cyclopes were freed from their confinement. Their focused power finally allowed expression. In gratitude, they crafted gifts for Zeus and his brothers, tools that would shape the future of divine order. For Zeus, they forged thunder and lightning, symbols of clarity and decisive force. For Poseidon, they shaped the trident, granting command over the restless seas. For Hades, they fashioned a helm of invisibility, allowing passage between seen and unseen realms. The Hecatoncheires were also released, their overwhelming strength turned from chaos toward balance. With 100 hands, they hurled stones like rain, not in rage, but as instruments of inevitable change. The Titans, led by figures such as Atlas and others loyal to the old order, stood firm. They fought not only to preserve power, but to preserve identity. The world they had shaped was being transformed beyond recognition. As the struggle continued, Zeus learned the weight of leadership. Power alone did not secure harmony. Decisions carried consequence. Victory required responsibility as much as strength. Eventually, the balance tipped. The old order gave way. The Titans were subdued, not erased. Many were cast into Tartarus, the deep space beneath the world, guarded not as punishment alone, but as containment. Order required boundaries. Atlas, burdened with consequence, was set to hold the sky aloft, ensuring separation between heaven and earth would endure. His task was not cruelty, but necessity, maintaining the structure that allowed the world to function. With the Titanomachy concluded, the cosmos rested again. This rest was different from the stillness of chaos or the uneasy calm of Cronus's reign. It was structured, intentional, and aware. Zeus emerged not merely as victor but as steward. His role was not to dominate existence but to balance it. Authority was now linked to oversight rather than suppression. The world was ready for division, not in conflict, but in order. Responsibilities were distributed among the siblings. Each realm would have its guardian. The heavens were claimed by Zeus, open and expansive, seat of clarity and oversight. The seas fell to Poseidon, ever moving and unpredictable, yet held within boundaries. The underworld became the realm of Hades, not a place of torment, but of depth, memory, and finality. This division did not fracture unity, it preserved it. By defining realms, chaos was avoided. Each force had space to exist according to its nature. As you listen, notice how the story has shifted. The focus is no longer on birth alone, nor on suppression, but on balance through differentiation. This is the moment when the world begins to resemble the one later myths would inhabit. The age before Zeus had ended, but the age of Zeus had not yet fully begun. What followed would be refinement rather than upheaval, relationship rather than rebellion. The cosmos now moved with rhythm and structure. Night and day continued their cycle. earth and sky remained apart. Seas rose and fell. Depth remained below. This section of the story settles into quiet order, allowing the listener to rest within the idea of balance achieved through patience and responsibility. And from this calm foundation, the world of gods and mortals would slowly take shape, guided not by chaos, but by measured harmony. With the great conflict settled and the structure of the cosmos defined, the world entered a quieter phase of becoming. This was not an age of sudden events, but of slow adjustment, where forces learned how to exist within boundaries that had only recently been established. Balance, once achieved through struggle, now needed to be maintained through awareness. Zeus, now settled in the open sky, did not rush to impose his will. The stories describe him as watchful in this period, attentive to the rhythms that had formed. Authority, newly earned, was exercised with restraint. The world did not need another cycle of suppression. It needed steadiness. The heavens above became a place of clarity and distance. From there, Zeus observed rather than interfered. Thunder and lightning were not tools of constant force, but symbols of presence, reminders that order existed and could be restored if it faltered. Below, Gaia continued her quiet work. She had witnessed multiple cycles of power rise and fall. Her role remained unchanged. She supported all things equally, offering stability regardless of who ruled above her. Mountains remained firm. Rivers continued their paths. Life unfolded at its own pace. The seas, guided by Poseidon, moved with restless consistency. Waves rose and fell without rebellion, held within limits that allowed motion without destruction. The sea learned its boundaries, just as the sky had learned its distance from the earth. In the depths, Hades took his place not as a tyrant, but as a keeper. His realm was quiet and ordered, a place of rest and finality. It held what had completed its journey, offering stillness rather than punishment. Depth, like height, found its purpose through containment. With the realms defined, the cosmos entered an age of refinement. Forces that had once clashed now learned to coexist. The tension that remained was subtle, woven into the fabric of existence rather than erupting openly. Zeus's siblings each embodied aspects of continuity. Hestia held the quiet center, the hearth, the place of return. Demeter governed growth and nourishment, guiding cycles of planting and harvest. Hera presided over bonds and commitments, shaping relationships through structure and expectation. These presences were not loud, they worked gently, influencing life through pattern rather than decree. Their roles emphasized maintenance over creation, signaling a shift in the nature of divine influence. The world itself responded to this change. Time moved with greater regularity. Seasons followed one another. Birth and decay balanced each other. Mortality entered existence not as punishment, but as part of rhythm. Nothing was meant to remain unchanged forever. As the cosmos stabilized, the memory of earlier chaos did not vanish. It remained as potential, a reminder of what could return if balance were ignored. Order was not permanent, it required attention. Zeus understood this deeply. His rule was shaped by awareness of impermanence. He did not seek to halt time, as Cronus had attempted. Instead, he allowed it to move, trusting that adaptability was stronger than control. The Titans, contained in Tartarus or assigned their roles, continued to exist. They were not erased. Their presence served as foundation, holding up the world through forces unseen. Even subdued, they remained essential. Atlas, bearing the sky, ensured separation endured. His burden was constant, but so was his purpose. The structure of the cosmos depended on this steady endurance. As you listen, notice how the story has shifted once more. There is no longer urgency, no rising conflict. The narrative has slowed, reflecting a world settling into itself. This stage of the myth speaks less of action and more of balance. It suggests that true stability is not dramatic. It is quiet, sustained, and often unnoticed. The age before Zeus had been marked by creation and upheaval. The age under Zeus began with observation and care. The cosmos, having learned through repetition, moved forward with greater awareness. The gods did not seek to dominate every aspect of existence. They allowed space for growth, change, and eventual transition. This allowance was itself a form of wisdom. The world, now ordered, did not close itself off from possibility. It remained open, flexible, and alive. The cycles established were not rigid rules, but guiding patterns. As the night continues, let this sense of calm order settle within you. The story no longer presses forward, it rests within rhythm. The cosmos breathes evenly now. Above, below, and between, everything has its place. Change will come again, as it always does, but for now, the world rests within balance. This quiet era prepares the way for what follows, not through tension, but through continuity. The stage is set for stories of interaction rather than origin, of relationship rather than rebellion. And so the myth carries on, gently and patiently, held within the steady flow of time. As the ordered world settled into its rhythms, attention turned from vast cosmic shifts to the quieter patterns that sustained existence. This phase of the story does not rush forward. It lingers, observing how balance is preserved through countless small movements rather than singular events. Zeus remained watchful, not distant but measured. His presence in the sky was a constant reminder of oversight rather than domination. Storms did not arrive without purpose, and calm returned just as surely. The heavens became a place of signals and cycles, not sudden disruption. Below, the surface of the world responded to this steadiness. Lands formed contours, valleys deepened slowly, rivers traced familiar routes, guided by gravity and time. The earth learned how to hold life gently, without excess or scarcity. Demeter's influence became visible through the turning of seasons. Growth followed rest. Abundance yielded to dormancy, and dormancy prepared the way for renewal. These cycles were not hurried. They taught patience by repetition, offering reassurance through predictability. Hestia's quiet presence anchored the world inwardly. She did not roam or command. She remained at the center, representing continuity and return. Through her, the idea of home entered existence, a place of warmth and stability amid change. Hera's domain shaped relationships, bonds formed through commitment rather than force. The myths describe tension here as well, but beneath them lies a broader idea. Structure allows connection to endure. Relationships gain meaning when they are held within boundaries. Poseidon's seas continued their endless motion. Though capable of upheaval, they more often reflected consistency. Tides rose and fell. Currents followed paths. The sea became a teacher of movement contained within form. Hades' realm remained unseen but essential. It absorbed what had completed its course, providing rest and finality. Depth, like height, served a purpose. The world required both to remain whole. As these roles stabilized, the memory of earlier ages softened. Chaos no longer pressed at the edges of existence. Tartarus held what needed containment. The cosmos learned that not all forces must be eliminated. Some simply require boundaries. The Titans, still present beneath the surface, continued to support reality. Their roles were no longer dominant but foundational. Oceanus encircled the world with flowing waters. Themis upheld balance through natural law. Mnemosyne preserved memory, ensuring that experience informed continuity. These forces did not seek attention. They worked quietly, shaping reality through persistence rather than display. Their presence suggests that stability often depends on what remains unseen. As the age matured, time itself found a gentler rhythm. Cronus's legacy shifted from fear to flow. Time was no longer something to be resisted, but something to move with. Change became expected rather than feared. This acceptance transformed the nature of existence. Mortality, when it later appeared, would be understood not as loss alone, but as part of the larger pattern. Nothing was meant to remain unchanged. Endings created space for beginnings. The myths slow here intentionally. They invite the listener to rest within continuity rather than anticipation. The great struggles have passed. What remains is the steady unfolding of life within established bounds. As you listen, there is no need to follow each transition. Let the repetition of cycles become soothing. The story mirrors breath, movement, rest, and return. The cosmos has learned from itself. Each age has contributed something necessary. Chaos provided possibility, Gaia provided foundation, Uranus offered expanse, Cronus taught consequence, Zeus brought balance through awareness. This accumulation of experience shaped a world capable of sustaining complexity without collapse. Diversity could exist without chaos. Motion could continue without destruction. The story before Zeus was not merely a prelude to later myths. It was a lesson in becoming. Each transformation prepared the ground for what followed. Now the world stands ready for interaction rather than origin, for stories of connection rather than creation, for narratives that move across landscapes already formed. This readiness does not demand attention. It rests quietly, like a field prepared for planting, waiting for the right season. As night deepens, allow this calm persistence to settle within you. The universe in these stories does not rush. It breathes, adjusts, and continues. The balance achieved is not perfect, but it is sufficient. And within that sufficiency, life finds room to unfold. The age before Zeus has fully given way to an age of presence. Not dominance, but stewardship. Not fear, but acceptance. And with this gentle understanding, the myth carries on, steady and unhurried, held within the slow turning of time. As the world continued within its established balance, the myths gradually turned away from great transformations and toward quiet presence. The age before Zeus was now complete, and the age under Zeus unfolded not through upheaval but through interaction and subtle influence. The cosmos no longer required dramatic reshaping. Its foundations were firm. Earth, sea, sky, and depth each held their place. What remained was the gentle unfolding of meaning within this structure, the slow weaving of existence through countless small moments. Zeus remained attentive, aware that order survives through care rather than force. He observed the world as it moved beneath him, not as something to be controlled, but as something to be guided. When balance wavered, correction came softly, like a breeze shifting clouds rather than a storm tearing them apart. The sky itself became a canvas of rhythm. Clouds formed and dissolved. Stars traced paths across the night. The heavens reflected time's passage without urgency. Each movement reinforced the idea that change could be gentle. On the earth below, life followed similar patterns. Growth emerged from rest. Stillness followed activity. These transitions were not dramatic. They occurred quietly, teaching the value of patience through repetition. Gaia's presence remained constant, offering support without demand. She did not favor one age over another. She held all things equally, allowing life to rise, fall, and return. Her endurance suggested that stability does not come from resisting change, but from accommodating it. The seas continued their motion, endless and contained. Poseidon's realm did not seek dominance over the land, nor did the land attempt to restrain the sea. Each respected the other's boundaries, creating harmony through coexistence. In the depths, the realm of Hades remained calm and orderly. It absorbed what had completed its journey, offering stillness rather than fear. This quiet acceptance of finality allowed the world above to continue without burden. The Titans, now distant in influence, remained essential beneath the surface. Their forces supported the world invisibly. Memory, law, flow, and endurance worked together, ensuring continuity. The myths remind us that what is hidden often carries the greatest weight. As time moved forward, the fear that once defined Cronus's rule dissolved. Time was no longer an enemy to be conquered, but a current to move with. Acceptance replaced resistance, allowing existence to unfold naturally. This shift marked the true end of the age before Zeus. The world had learned from repetition. Suppression had given way to balance. Fear had yielded to awareness. The stories slow here deliberately. They invite rest, reflection, and ease. The listener is not asked to anticipate conflict or resolution. The narrative settles into continuity. As you listen, let the repetition of ideas become soothing rather than demanding. The myth is no longer about what happens next, but about how things remain. The world breathes. Above, below, and between, everything moves gently within its role. Change will come again in its time, but for now, the cosmos rests within understanding. This is the quiet inheritance of the age before Zeus, a world shaped by cycles, tempered by experience, and held together by balance rather than force. And within this balance, the story softens, preparing the way for countless quieter tales that will follow, each unfolding within the steady rhythm of existence. The story now releases its final hold on sequence and lineage, not by circling backward, but by widening outward. What remains is not a retelling of what has been, but a settling into what is. The age before Zeus does not conclude with a moment, but with a condition, a world that has learned how to continue without strain. The cosmos, once driven by emergence and resistance, now moves through allowance. Forces exist without urgency. Nothing seeks to dominate what surrounds it. Each realm holds its own weight, its own responsibility, and its own silence. The sky stretches without pressing downward. The earth supports without asking. The sea moves without breaking its bounds. The depths receive without judgment. These are not achievements, but understandings reached through time. Zeus, now fully present within his role, does not appear as a figure of action here. He becomes an awareness rather than a character. His presence is felt in the steadiness of weather, in the reliability of cycles, in the absence of disruption. Power, having passed through conflict, has learned restraint. The myth softens intentionally. Attention is no longer drawn to divine figures, but to the world they inhabit. This shift reflects the deeper purpose of these stories, not to elevate rulers, but to describe the conditions that allow existence to feel livable. Time itself settles into flow. It no longer threatens or rushes. Moments follow one another naturally, without resistance. What ends does so gently. What begins does not demand recognition. This rhythm becomes the quiet inheritance of the world. The Titans, once central, now exist as underlying support. Their influence remains, but without voice. Strength, memory, balance, and endurance work continuously beneath awareness. Stability depends on what does not announce itself. This stage of the myth invites release. There is nothing left to anticipate. The future no longer needs to be secured. The past no longer needs to be corrected. The present is sufficient. The age before Zeus does not vanish. It remains folded into the world, informing it quietly. Chaos survives as possibility. Gaia remains as ground. Uranus persists as expanse. Cronus endures as time. Nothing is lost. Everything is integrated. And in this integration, the story becomes still. As the narrative loosens further, the focus drifts from gods and forces to the texture of existence itself. The myths now function less as explanations and more as atmosphere, shaping how the world is felt rather than how it is understood. The night sky, once a symbol of separation and height, becomes a place of quiet continuity. Stars do not command attention, they simply remain. Their presence suggests endurance without effort, light without urgency. The land holds memory without replaying it. What has occurred leaves its trace, not as burden, but as foundation. Mountains stand because time allowed them to stand. Valleys exist because movement passed through them. Nothing needs to justify its form. The sea reflects this same principle. Its surface changes endlessly, yet its nature remains constant. Movement does not imply instability. Stillness does not imply stagnation. Each supports the other. The depths remain unlit. not as something hidden, but as something complete without observation. Not all things are meant to be seen. Some exist only to support what lies above. This portion of the myth offers no instruction. It does not ask for belief or interpretation. It offers familiarity instead, the comfort of a world that knows how to continue. The age before Zeus prepared existence for relationship rather than origin. Creation no longer stands alone, it participates. Everything belongs to something larger without being absorbed by it. Here, repetition is no longer needed. Cycles move on their own. Awareness can step aside. The story no longer requires attention to persist. This is where myth transitions into rest, not because it ends, but because it no longer needs to speak. The listener is free to drift without losing anything. Meaning does not depend on wakefulness. Understanding is not required. The world described here continues, whether it is noticed or not. That is its strength. The final movement of this story does not resolve, conclude, or summarize. It simply allows space to widen. The universe, having learned balance, no longer presses forward through narrative. It breathes. There is no final image to hold, no last name to remember. What remains is the sense of a world that has found its pace and no longer needs to explain itself. The age before Zeus fades not into silence, but into background. It becomes the quiet structure beneath later stories, beneath human memory, beneath sleep itself. Nothing is being prepared, nothing is waiting to begin. Continuity replaces anticipation. This is where the story releases you, not by ending, but by no longer asking to be followed. The world continues evenly, quietly, and without demand.